Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very happy to welcome you today to join us for a virtual event from East Meets West Talk Series, Caring for Our Common Home. East Meets West Talk Series is a virtual event series launched by the Beijing Center to promote cross-cultural communication and exchange. My name is Veronika Kotova. I'm a project assistant at the Beijing Center, and I will moderate today's event. I would also like to introduce my colleague, Ms. Vikitsa Elenovska, who will help me to facilitate the event. Bringing together speakers representing organizations in the UK, the US, and China, our discussion will focus on offering insights into climate and biodiversity, then Encyclical Laudato Si, and our responsibility to the planet we inhabit and the future generations. The event will begin with a presentation by Dr. Carlos Zepeda, Assistant Director in Policy in Practice at Laudato Si Research Institute at Campion Hall, University of Oxford. Following with his presentation, Ms. Yejing Li, a Senior Program Officer at WWF China, will give an introduction of WWF's work towards forest conservation efforts in China. The event will conclude with a presentation by Ms. Eleanor Koo, co-founder of Care for Our Common Home Foundation, who will introduce youth efforts towards eco-responsibility. Dr. Zepeda, could you please share your screen and introduce our presentation? Thank you.
Greetings from the Laudato Si Research Institute, based at Campion Hall, University of Oxford. Today's talk, it's going to explore transforming our world to care for our common home. And it's my pleasure to talk about the challenges from the climate and biodiversity crisis. It's part of a East Meets West talk series, and I'm delighted to and thankful for the Beijing Center for kindly inviting us as the Laudato Si Research Institute to collaborate in this endeavor of examining the challenges of climate and biodiversity. Okay, so let's begin. So the very first thing is that we need to take into account that the challenges from the climate and biodiversity crisis are with all the different situations structured as three big elements that I want to outline. First, the first part of my presentation will deal with the understanding of what we call the crisis, the solutions so far, the examples that we can give about the crisis. The second part will deal about the exploration of what it means to do radical change. What are the new ideas, the new actions and examples that we want to explore from the Laudato Si Research Institute as examples. And we will deal with the idea of how to evaluate change, what matters, what can we learn from change, and the next steps. So this is one of the things that strike us. We are a research institute and we facilitate transdisciplinary research, inclusive of religious traditions, that models a different way of approaching higher education and influences those invested in socio-ecological change for the flourishing of our common home. And this last line, together with the first line, transdisciplinary research for the flourishing of our common home, is exactly what our mission constitutes. And this is a big mission, like a Mount Everest that we have in terms of what we want to achieve. But we don't do it alone. The whole planet has embraced our inspiration, the Laudato Si encyclical, based on Pope Francis' encyclical that explored the idea of caring for our common home. And in it, of the whole encyclical, I wanted to highlight one key message. In the encyclical, Pope Francis highlights that the importance of having a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates about the environment, so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. This is crucial, and this is what really inspires us to do as much as possible in terms of listening to the voices of the earth and the voices of the poor. And also to never forget that whenever we talk about ecology, we always talk about the social. It's all connected and cannot be untied. Now, the other source of inspiration for us is the activists, the indigenous communities, the marginalized people that have been working tirelessly on working for the defense of the planet and the communities that live in communion with nature. So we have Berta Cáceres, who was an indigenous environmental activist from Honduras. She was the Goldman Environmental Prize, but because of her efforts challenging powers that were harming nature in Honduras, in her home country, she was killed in 2016. She had this very incredibly important message, and she said, we must answer their call, our Mother Earth, militarized, fenced in, poisoned, a place where basic rights are systematically violated, demands that we take action. Let us build societies that are able to coexist in a dignified way, in a way that protects life. Let us come together and remain hopeful as we defend and care for the blood of this earth and of its spirits. So she has had a great impact, but also recently, there's a Jesuit father, Stan Swami, who was recently died on July the 5th, just a couple of weeks ago, and he had been incarcerated for his defense of indigenous human rights, and his life and his testimony that very small actions throughout life can have a big impact for the conscience of the planet. So all these voices really inspire us, and it leads me to this idea of understanding the crisis. And the point about the crisis is that, you see, we think about the climate change crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, the issues of social injustice, the economic crisis, inequality. We all think that they're siloed, unidimensional crisis, that they're not connected, but they're all one crisis. They're multidimensional, and they're part of the system in which we're living in as a planet. And so we try to think things in a systemic way. We don't chunk it up. We don't just see the heads of a dragon. We look at the whole of it, even if it's got many heads, it's part of one thing. And just as a tree has its roots, has its trunk, and has its leaves, we think of the root causes, the ideologies, the normative frameworks, the power relations, as the core of what we want to change. And to do that, we need to engage with the process, with the roots, the root causes, and with the process, the policies, the actions, behaviors, and impacts. Our research needs to feed in, but we need to see the whole picture. Now, the crisis is, as you see, the world has been getting warmer. I think it's no news for anyone that has been living in this planet in the last 10 years, at least. But you can see that at least from 1851 to 2020, you had a gradual process of warming, even throughout the cycle of the year. You can see that every cycle throughout the last decades and the last century, we've been getting warmer and warmer. And this does not, anyone who's in denial should just see these pictures of these graphs, and you should come to terms with it, because it's really what's going on in our world. Now, who are the key actors here? Obviously, we can see in the chart, China, the US, the EU, the big powers, India, Russia, Japan, Germany, they all have a big stake of megatons of CO2, carbon dioxide per year. And if you chunk them up and you see the average emissions per head, you can see that they have a great deal of weight per capita as well. Now, these responsibilities mean that there are different ways of interacting with the policies. There are those who have more impact, and those who have less. And you can see the ones that have less impact in terms of the carbon dioxide. And yet sometimes they are pushed to have more burdens in many ways. Now, it's not just about what gets emitted, but where it comes from. What are the economic activities of this system that we're talking about? It's a capitalist system, so it's based on issues like manufacturing, transport, electricity and heat, the industry, and all that accumulated is extracted from coal, oil, gas, and cement, and this all contributes to different scenarios. The greenhouse gas emissions up to the present are just really, really difficult to change those paths. So the paths that we don't want to go is a path of no climate policies. And when I mean no climate policies, is we don't follow any climate policies. They may exist on paper, but if we don't follow them, then you will have this path of 4.1 to 4.8 degrees Celsius. And then that will be properly hell on earth. Now, the current policies still are not enough. They will lead us to almost 3 degrees Celsius above of where we should be. And this last line is where we aim at. So you can see that either we don't do anything or we keep with our current policies, we are just going to the abyss in any of those two paths. So we need to shift, we need a change. Now, the problem is that the crisis of biodiversity also comes in, and the world has failed to meet a single target to stop destruction of nature. None of the 2080 biodiversity targets that were set on 2010 have been achieved. So none of the 20 to this day. So you can see how worrying it is, because obviously if natural habitats are continuing to disappear, vast numbers of species are being threatened. And not only that, but environmentally damaging government subsidies have not been eliminated around the world. $500 billion is still going on the system of that damages biodiversity. Then it's worrying. And how can you not be worried if also that's compounded with a crisis of social injustice that comes in? There's the top 1,000 billionaires' wealth continues, despite the pandemic, to be around 100. It didn't change. And the inequalities between just the 10 richest, like 10 people, the 10 richest billionaires would have enough money to provide enough to prevent anyone on earth to fall into poverty due to the virus, and to pay for the COVID-19 vaccine for all. It's just 10 people. So you can see that those are really stark and worrying facts that you can drill in by race, by genders, and you can see that inequalities persist. But let me go ahead. I'm just going to focus on some of the things that really I want to get before we start building some of the things. And this is about the solutions so far. The dominant paradigm has been designing policy solutions with the same old methodologies. And the elephant in the room is that we need to accept that we have embraced a collective ignorance, siloed, partial, chunked up knowledge. That means that we don't engage with transdisciplinary ideas. We are collectively blind and deaf to indigenous and religious perspectives and the wisdom of the indigenous populations that live in communion with nature. They're nature-based solutions. They're not invited to all those conferences that that I just mentioned. And if they're invited, it's just a tokenistic practice. They're not really listening. It's just they're not taking into account their solutions. So we have a collective denial of where we are and the destruction that we're causing. And what's really worrying is that if we don't act and we don't change, there's shortness of time. So, and this is what I wanted to get at, the radical change. We need to transform this planet into the key way that we are envisioning. Transforming ideas need to transform anyone's ideas. You need to transform the way you think, and the way you think is informed by the way you engage with others, the transdisciplinary dialogues, the knowledge that comes in. So we at the Laudato Si Research Institute, we're trying to make a commitment to listen to the poor and excluded, listen to the earth, listen to the voices of future generations. How is that? By listening to the concerns of the youth, and trying to connect with the spiritual, with the idea of and belief systems that shape our world, and that is the idea of God as well. So we want radical change, new actions, and we've got several examples that I can bring in. Because I'm conscious of the time, I will just mention a couple. We're constructing a global Laudato Si research network that embraces all this transdisciplinarity that we're thinking of. Listen to Earth roundtables. A lot of people sitting down with the communities of marginalized communities and the activists sitting down together to really listen. And as Cardinal Cherney said once, listen till it hurts. And that has really informed our thinking. Now, the way we envision this thing is that we want system change, not just climate change, and we want to change all the different things that matter. And what really matters is that not everything that you can measure is important, and not everything that gets measured matters. So you can think of many things that are not measured, like love, like solidarity. Where are they? And even power, the power of change, the power of the indigenous knowledge, the power of the spirit, the spirits of the indigenous community, the river spirits, not just what we think of the big religions, is all that is not embraced. So all that is not measured, but it's important. We are inspired by China's evolving energy mix. This is an example, yes, and you can measure it, and you can think of 2060 as an evolving setting where you can have changes in energy production, and that might be helpful, yes, and there's even plans on how it's going to be. China is going to be more reliant on solar power, and nuclear power, and so forth, and it's going to decline coal use. And that's all fine. And I'm using that example because it's relevant to the Beijing Center. And you can see that all countries are making commitments and the race to net zero to 2050. But is that enough? Because promises are not exactly the same as actions. So what we want is to create spaces where we really listen and we transform ourselves from the roots of our core system, our core values, and the way we transform ourselves and others. This is what I wanted to say. I think in terms of next steps, there are examples that I can bring in for the conversation, and I'd be delighted to bring those in here. And just to say thank you very much for the invitation.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zepeda, for your great presentation about caring for our common home. And we learned a lot about what is actually caring for our common home and looked at this problem on a multi-dimensional perspective. So thank you for your introduction of also work of Laudato Si Research Institute. And if you have any questions to Dr. Zepeda, you can leave them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. And you can also leave questions to all the speakers that they can answer at the end of the event during the Q&A session. And now I would like to welcome Ms. Yejing Li from WWF China, who will introduce the effort of China on forest conservation. So even though the problem that Dr. Zepeda talked about of the climate change is very multidimensional, we can focus on one aspect today, like a forest status in China, improving biodiversity, which is very important because China is fourth by land and the first by population, and holds 10% of world's plant species and 13% of animal species in the world. And China can be a great example of how this problem can be tackled. So please, Ms. Lee.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen? Okay. So, hello everybody, this is Yejing Li from WWF China Beijing region. And it's my pleasure to be invited to participate in this event and also to talk something about the forest and biodiversity, forest-based biodiversity related projects within my working group. So I have been working in WWF China for almost 5 years, and now I'm leading the forest system management and also forest based restoration related projects in my region. And firstly, I would like to have a very quick and brief introduction about my organization in China. And so we have been working in China for almost 41 years. And 3 years ago, we have transferred from an implementation office to national office, which means that we will fundraising and more on-ground projects in China. And now we have 8 office in China, from the north to the south cities, and Beijing is the biggest one, and the local office is focused on different case basis and landscape conservation. And we have 113 full-time staffs in total. And the invested in China is about RMB 1 billion since 2000 year. So this is a very general map of the forest status in China. We can say there's different green in this map, and different green means different status of forest. If it's greener, means the forest here is better than other places. So this map, I think it was released by NASA last year, and great achievements have been made in the past 50 years, with 200 million hectares of forest coverage of more than 21, and especially the area of planted forests ranks first in the world. So this is very hot news in China last year for the forest department and the forest managers all over the country. So it's true that the area of forest in China has been increased very significantly. So, but however, our forests are still young. So the proportion of young and middle-aged forest is as high as 65%, and the forest resource haven't recovered to the level of the 1960s. So because it's a long story. For a long time, the China forest status have been over harvest for half century. I think it have many reasons, because the country need to development, and we should use as much as wood from our own country. And but until now, so most forests in China have been different degree of degradation. So and I think the Chinese government also realized this problem. So from year 2015, 6 years ago, so our Chinese government, the forest department, released a policy, a logging ban. So it means that if the forest is belong to natural forest, So the forests are not allowed to be harvested anymore for commercial purpose. So, but the percent of natural forest is more than 16% in China. So it means most of the forest need to be protected, not for harvest. So another fact is most of the forests are still so young, and there is no more forest can be harvested anymore, to be honest. So this is forest pictures, and very typical forest in Northeast China is local species. And the left one, I think, is white birch, and the right one is lunch, is also it's a similar forest status, is pure forest. And we can say the density of the forest is very high. It's very crowded among the forest and no space. So when we talk about the natural forest in China, so this is the natural forest in China. So the forests are really very young and need to be management. So this is a definition of empty forest, and empty forest refers an ecosystem that is void of large mammals and often have large, fully grown trees, but they lack large keynotes as a result of human impact. So simplify this definition is it means this forest only have trees but no wildlife. If anybody has been to China and has gone to into the forest and even the natural forest in China, you can see there's really very rare animals within the forest. So we call most of the forest in China empty forest. And as I mentioned, the logging ban policy in China, and after that, so most of the forests have been included into the basket of pure protection. It means that nobody can harvest, but nobody can also management this forest. But from WWF China's perspective, we think because the forest now the status is not healthy, it's unhealthy forest, we should have more scientific management and use a correct approach to accelerate the generation of the forest instead of just pure protection. So this is what our team is talking again and again to the forest department and from the central level to the local level. So we want to have some pilots and also have some policy related activity to tell the government that we should have some management, but not just let the forest stand there. So I have a very typical case. It's also our project which located in the Northeast China, and the Amo Tiger and Laptop National Park, which located in the in Jilin and Heilongjiang province and border by Russia and North Korea. So the total area of the national park is 146,000 hectares, and but the most important wildlife distribution area and one of the area within the richest biodiversity in this zone. So this is the area of this national park, and we select one of the most important forest farm under this national park, which called Wangqing Forest Bureau. So this is the central part of this national park, and we did 2 analyses of this forest farm. We can see the results. The left one is the distribution of HCV, high conservation value areas, which means this area is have better value, conservation value than other areas, which link to the species conservation and typical landscape or typical ecological zoom like this one, and the right one is about the degradation area of this central forest farm. We can see the percent is similar. It's all it shows that half of this area have the very high conservation value, and at the same time half of the forest have been different degree of degradation. So and this is the tiger corridor from Russia to China. We can see this green line in the right is the border of Russia and China, and most tigers cross the border from Russia to China, and the green circle is our project location, and there's almost, I think, around 20 tigers active in this area, and this is the corridor. So we can see most of tigers must have to wire this green circle to another places. So this is why we select this location, and so we have thinking about why this very typical and natural forest types degraded so seriously, and so this picture is also the picture of this national park. So we can see that the density is very high, 0.9, and the single large space and very few shrub under the forest, and which is not suitable for the survival of the animals such as tigers and leopards, and also is not suitable for some like deers and other animals. So it's not one animal's habitat, is a lot of small animals, big animals. So because of this state of the forest, there's no and very little animals are still distributed in this forest. And based on this status, so WWF China are engaging the departments to considering food chain perspective when you restore or protect your forest. So it's very common that in China the forest area are working on the forest restoration. They don't considering animal issues, but for the animal experts, they are only thinking some monitoring and the species and other issues, but they don't think about the habitat issues. So this is what we WWF China want to do, to engage the different departments to work together to restore the habitat for the animals. And this is our target, and we just kick off this restoration projects in China 2 years ago, and so the Chinese government mentioned restoration very often in recent years, because they also realize for the last century we are harvesting the forest, but for this century we need to we don't need to plant so many trees, but we need to restore the forest ecosystem. This is what government is calling on the forest farms to have some restoration by themselves, and also they are preparing and developing some related guidelines and technical books to guide the local managers to restore their forest. So and as we also think it's a good opportunity for WWF to participate, not only for the projects level and also for the international level, to have some really good concept to include it into the framework of the restoration issues. So we want to answer these questions, and the most important, we want to, as an organization, want to make the forest and wildlife as a whole to organize different and key stakeholders from forest and wildlife to participate into one forest based biodiversity restoration projects. So this is what our plan. And this is a project location. We can say now we are focusing on these three provinces now, which is Jilin in the northeast China. I mentioned is a national park. Jilin and Heilongjiang is the national park related provinces, but our projects are in Jilin, so limited budget and capacity. But Jilin is a key point of the national park. And the Sichuan provinces, which is also very it's a hometown of panda and also other very local species. So we also want to set demonstration in Sichuan province and also in Yunnan. Yunnan is Yunnan. I think the elephant topic is very hot in China and in global for the recent days, because more and more elephants are going out from the nature reserve to the community, and it's really hot news in China. So the reason is because the nature reserve for the elephant conservation, the area is as big as enough, but the forest, the habitat is not good. So we also want to set some demonstrations in elephant natural reserve in Yunnan province. So this is our currently planned project location, but if we have more fundraising and more capacity in the future, we will cite more demonstration all over the country related to some key species. So that is my presentation. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Li, for your presentation about the forest and biodiversity conservation efforts in China. And also thank you very much for your work that you are doing. And now that we took global approach and learn about the national projects and caring for our common home, we will move on to the youth efforts in caring for our common home and some projects that young generation is doing, because actually it a lot depends on the young generation, how those problems will be tackled. So I would like to welcome Ms. Eleanor Kuhl for Care for Our Common Home Foundation to tell us more about her foundation and what the foundation is up to. So Eleanor, please.
Thank you so much. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Eleanor Kuhl. I'm a co-founder of Care for Our Common Home Foundation. And firstly, I would like to thank everyone at the Beijing Center and particularly Veronica for this wonderful opportunity. Dr. Zepeda and Ms. Li's presentations definitely set a high standard. So I'm aiming that my presentation on environmental responsibilities across all ages will be as inspirational and hopefully to everyone's interest too. I want to quickly introduce the foundation I'm here to represent today. Care for Our Common Home is a not-for-profit organization in California. We're devoted to enhancing environmental awareness, especially for youth. I was inspired to start Care for Our Common Home because I believe that all big achievements begin with small actions, and that inspiring others on a noble cause is a virtue to promote. So today I'll be talking about our individual environmental responsibilities, ways to make a change, and youth motivation. To begin, we all have a social responsibility of taking care of our common home. But how can we promote just environmental responsibility? This is a very important question because many adults empowered don't care about climate change. And there are three main reasons for that. Number one, occupation with their own lives. For example, those who have children and assign a very low priority to environmental issues because of said children or other responsibilities. And similarly, those who don't have any children or connection to the environment and don't have a stake in the future, so have no reason to care what happens once they're gone. Number two, on awareness. You will not believe how many adults think that global warming is a hoax or a natural cause. In a 2019 national survey project by Yale, they found that 20% or 1 in 5 American adults are either doubtful or dismissive of the fact that climate change exists and is a direct result of human action. Lastly, the third and most common reason is that sadly, many of us have an ingrained feeling of powerlessness or meaninglessness in doing small works for the environment. This is a difficult barrier to overcome, but a very necessary one. Since adults in power may not be alive for the predicament of the climate crisis in around 30 years, regardless of the sustainability of laws they pass, there is not enough action currently being taken to stop or slow climate change. Even though it would be selfish to pass on environmental responsibility to youth, if young people were given a say in environmental laws, they would support sustainable innovations and policies that are for the greater good of the environment, as well as everyone else on Earth who plans to live past the year 2050. So back to the original question of just environmental responsibility. How do we come into this? Well, we promote youth contributions. Care for Our Common Home Foundation is an initiative to offer a platform for environmental innovations and ideas to youth, as well as facilitate individuals to uphold their responsibilities and take care of our common home, regardless of age or environmental attitude. Our platform is providing young people the opportunity to create a much stronger impact. That being said, people of all ages have a responsibility, or else it wouldn't be just at all. Everyone has the responsibility to do their part, even if it's just small works, because those inspire others and add up very quickly. By spreading awareness and contributing small works along the goal, we envision to inspire individuals and corporations to amplify their contributions to fulfill their roles in environmental justice. Next, I'll be showing you some of the great small changes that young people can do. They're great inspirations for all of us, and some are from our network. Social media is an amazing way for people of all ages to spread ideas that they're passionate about in a fun and easy way. These TikTokers teach and inspire viewers from all over the world, promote eco-friendly products, and share each other's ideas. One of my inspirations for creating Care for Our Common Home is a remarkable woman named Inez Moreo, who carries out her philosophy of every little step matters by making daily posts showcasing eco-responsible habits, which are accessible to everyone, including those that are less environmentally involved. She teaches simple and practical solutions to her community, and she's well aware of the impact she has on us. So each of her partnerships with brands is rigorously analyzed in order to make sure that every product she shares with her community matches her personal values and beliefs. She and all of the TikTokers above make environmental initiatives viral and are inspiring others with the objective to change viewers' lives. Next, we're bringing another perspective of an inspirational work from 4 Nigerian girls, 3 of which are shown here, who created an amazing sustainable source of energy. Using a resource that everyone has, they developed a generator that produces 6 hours of power. Does anyone here want to take a guess as to what resource powers their incredible invention? Well, to our surprise, the girls' device actually removes valuable hydrogen from urine, isolating it so it can be used as an energy source. It's absolutely amazing that with just 1 liter of urine, an easily accessible resource for everyone, it can power a battery for 6 hours. At only 14 and 15 years old, they're truly an inspiration for renewable energy developers everywhere. We can only imagine the great accomplishments and renewable energy that they'll achieve in the future. On top of creating something, this picture of an inspirational student-led climate strike shows another aspect of what youth can do. influencing government policies on a community level plays a significant role in helping our environment. This protest, started by Vanessa Nakate and some friends and family, was only made possible by thousands of students walking out of school for a singular focus: to draw attention to climate change and urge the government to take action. For example, 18-year-old student Umi Hoke, who learned about the strikes through friends in social media and has devoted much of her time to these climate strikes, says that young people can be the motivators, but at the end of the day, we don't have the ultimate power. It's the policymakers. This protest, which began as just a group of friends setting up strikes in different locations, soon inspired thousands of young people in more than 100 countries, from Nepal to Vanuatu, to walk out of schools to demand that adults do more to combat climate change. As we advocate small changes in daily life, Care for Our Common Home too takes action and spreads awareness by meeting up each Sunday at the crack of dawn to clean up the neglected highways near our homes. Because we noticed that the trash piling up from homeless people's temporary living quarters or people's disregard for their environmental influence had actually been there all 15 years of our lives. In the picture there, I'm the one with the white jacket and the green mask. You can see our team working together, tidying up all the trash bags we filled after a long, successful morning and proudly lining them up with the Adopt a Highway logo facing the busiest intersections to spread awareness to everyone in our community. Thus, combining spreading environmental awareness and taking action to clean our community. Of course, we know that the trash will eventually pile up again, but the point of this small work is to show people it matters that they properly throw away litter because we care, and also that a clean environment is just much more comfortable and pleasant to look at altogether. However, we know that it's presumptuous to expect people to care about your priorities, much less act on them just because you tell them to. So, a major issue is now, how can we inspire individuals to amplify their contributions to fulfill their roles in environmental justice? Before answering that, I'd like to quickly comment on something we have to overcome before we can successfully inspire individuals to amplify their contributions. Before kids can begin to influence others and create helpful innovations, they must first understand the issues of climate change and what can be done to help. The indoctrination of kids in public schools with the progressive social and cultural tenets did not start in earnest until about the early 1990s. Now, even though students take many courses on environmental issues, a study from Ankara University in Turkey has shown that their environmental knowledge does not always enhance awareness or influence behavioral intentions, and more inspirations are needed to enhance effectiveness. Our goal in educating young people is to help individuals, communities, and organizations learn more about the environment, as well as develop skills to investigate their environment and to make intelligent, informed decisions about how they can help take care of it. This is a quote from researchers from the same Ankara University in Turkey, which I want the audience to take special focus on because it best summarizes what we want to say on proficient environmental curriculum in schools. Environmental education is a lifelong process and must be dealt carefully in order to create environmentally concerned and responsible societies. Since environmental awareness is really one of the most important steps to just environmental responsibilities, this leads us back to the question of motivating individuals. This issue really inspired us to create a youth platform which will empower youth to create a stronger impact. However, even though we're a youth platform, there's no age limit on passionate people who can make a change in environmental justice. If we can transform into people who are more environmentally aware and care about our common home, we will all be a vital part of this movement, educating and transforming youth for the betterment of everyone. And moving forward, besides actively participating in community events like some of the examples I gave earlier, here are some small actions all of us can do to improve our common home with nothing but a bit of persistence. I only ask that we all find a few small works that we're most passionate about and make a habit of them. With small contributions like educating yourself and others on things like, for example, ripping the elastic bands off of masks before throwing them away to prevent animals being caught in them, or participating in community programs against climate change, helping report illegal activities to authorities, and volunteering at local environmental nonprofits. We will be combining the spread of awareness and helpful hands-on actions. So, to sum up our ideas of youth motivation, I would like to share a quote from Greta Thunberg when she was addressing the government at the Extinction Rebellion in London during April of 2019 to be everyone's takeaway. For way too long, the politicians and the people in power have gotten away with not doing anything to fight the climate crisis, but we will make sure that they will not get away with it any longer. We are striking because we have done our homework and they have not. So let's work together and continue to care for our common home. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Eleanor, for your presentation and your how you engage and inspire us to actually make a little change, and special thanks to your suggestions on how we all can improve the situation around us. I hope all the audience took some notes of what Eleanor just told us. And now we are moving to the Q&A session. So all participants are encouraged to ask more questions if you have any in the Q&A box or in the chat. And I will start with some questions that we already have. The first question is to all presenters. You have all presented some intriguing works in your respective areas. How would you comment on the other speakers' presentation, and in particular, what kind of synergy your work may have with them? Caring for our common home is a very wide topic, and I would like to see if you can share some insights on how different organizations with different focus can work together. So, is there anyone who would like to begin answering this question? Please go ahead. Okay.
Well, I can see a lot of possibilities of synergy, like you mentioned, from my perspective. Number one is promoting awareness. There's a lot of interesting work being done by WWF, which can be served as case studies to be presented to the youth population. And while you can pretty much Google everything today, it's still really important, if not more important than before, to have a solid understanding of real field work by sharing some dedicated work by expertise. I would consider that the first level, and what LSRI does can offer a second level of awareness in our work by promoting reflection and discernment opportunities, which are something that we need to put a little bit more effort on. So I'm definitely looking forward to any future collaboration opportunities.
Absolutely. And I join Eleanor and Beijing in this common endeavor, because what we've found, and I think one of the things that stems out of the conversation that I've just heard, these brilliant presentations by both, it's that we can only chunk bits of our insertion in the world and our impact, but the sum of all our efforts can be more than its part. And I particularly liked the idea of engaging First with youth, and I'll connect it with some things that were connected to what Beijing said about the work that WWF is doing in China. And it's the idea that we need to be like the forests that Beijing was describing, a forest that is about to be not really useful for biodiversity, not really useful for the tigers and the leopards, is not really useful for life as a whole, and the impact of this is that it has lots of consequences. But if you look at it in this perspective, there's only one type of tree that's being planted in those areas. And the same happens with human beings. If we only have one type of community doing their work for change, then it doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have the same range of products. And what we really want is to work together in the transdisciplinary, multidimensional way. And that means that we need to mimic what Jingjing was saying with having a proper social ecosystem that promotes change. And that means that everyone has a role, and as a hummingbird is as important as an elephant, and as a little cockroach, and even to the smallest creature. So I really envision synergies, because with youth, we are tackling the future. With biodiversity, we're tackling the idea of life itself. And we, as a research institute, we're trying to engage with the idea that when we look at this as a whole, we don't lose the idea that this is not a flat material world, but it's beyond. The care of creation it can include the voices of religious, moral, ethics, and spiritual aspects. And that is really important for change too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree with you, Dr. Collis, and I to be honest, from my personal perspective, no matter what we are doing, the conservation issues or the biodiversity issues, the central point is people. So we do everything for people. So it's just joking, but we talking a lot. Some days people will disappear, but the earth won't. So we do everything for people, and this is the most important thing. And another thing is every organization has their own role. So we are a circle, and we are on the different position, but we are doing the same contribution from different perspective. So this is also our working way. WWF's perspective is to link different like the institutions, communities, and also other really important stakeholders to do the same thing as conservation. So thank you, and thank you for your suggestions and your presentations. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering this question. And I'm really glad that everyone has some ideas on how this cooperation can go, because today we did share like the work on different levels, from global level to national level and to actually personal level that Eleanor introduced to us. And moving on with the next question that actually also can apply to all the speakers, or the speaker that would like to answer it. What do you believe is the most realistic approach to even slightly offsetting the environmental damage we have caused so far? So any ideas on that matter? Please go ahead.
Well, just a very quick idea. My whole presentation was based on one single thing, or rather 2 words: transdisciplinary dialogue. And if you can change, if you can sit people, because I was looking at one of the questions also from Agnes Fiducia, who had an important question about how to influence those in power in governments. I fully agree. We need to influence as much as possible, as many people, and especially those in power. But they are stubborn and they don't listen. So the point here is, for me, is how we become hummingbirds that go with this idea and insert ourselves like very sweetly right in their ears and speak and become whisperers for change. We deposit some ideas that really trickle in, and we need to do that in clever ways. Thankfully, youth is very, very powerful in doing these things, in making creative approaches. And I think we can all take into account those creative ideas to boost the way we become little whisperers, like the hummingbirds, depositing cross-fertilizing ideas into those in power. And that's my take. We focus on ideas and we disseminate them very carefully into those in power.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments on that question?
Well, I completely agree with inserting ourselves in spreading awareness and speaking out. I believe that to make a difference, we should just do our small works every day, and which is a very powerful thing. And like I mentioned, a few of the things we can do, like picking up trash and educating ourselves and others, those are very good for the spread of awareness and hands-on action as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if there are no other views on this question, thank you very much for answering it. And I actually have one more question for Eleanor. What noticeable changes have occurred in your local community as a result of your organization's efforts? Can you already see those changes?
Well, we recently received the nonprofit status from California, so our organization is in a relatively early phase and we're still growing. But that being said, we're already seeing some great results and our team is growing and we're absolutely ready to receive support or donations. So any contributions would be greatly appreciated, and you can find out how to donate in our website, www.cfoch.org.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And I think we will be moving towards the completing this event. So I would really thank everyone for today's sharing and for audience to staying with us till the end of the event. And the world is facing an unprecedented wave of environmental issues, from natural disasters, climate change, forest fire, and biodiversity extinction, compounded by the global COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm really glad that we took this chance to gather today and look at this problem first in the multidimensional perspective, that it's not only climate change and not only one problem, but there's actually many problems that should be tackled in a systematic way. And also, I'm very glad that we looked at this problem from different levels, like as I already mentioned, like a global, national, and personal effort. And thanks for all the audience again for joining us, and for all the speakers being with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.